Okay, everyone, let's make a start. Let's see if we can make a little start. So, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. I'm really excited with our new partnership with Scottish Women's Football. We are always challenged by our partners in the US to try and support them with international recruitment for talented young girls and women. And tonight's a chance to try and explain a little bit more about the process and the support we provide at First Point USA. So my name is Stuart McCaffrey. I am the Director of Sport at First Point. We're very fortunate tonight to be joined by Grace Rapp. Grace studied and played and was the captain at the University of Miami for 4 years, and looking forward to Grace being able to share her experience and some of her insights into life as a student athlete in the US. At First Point, we genuinely believe that the chance to play and study in the US is a life-changing opportunity. Tonight there'll be a sort of a mix of presentation slides, a bit of a Q&A with Grace, conclude with some more presentation slides, a little bit more information on what a scholarship is. And then we can finish with a bit of a Q&A with you guys, dropping some questions into the group chat. So, as I say, my name is Stuart McCaffrey, Director of Sport here at First Point. And what I try to do with any presentation I deliver is maybe give an example of my own experience in soccer, and maybe try and paint a picture of why my route and my journey was maybe not the one to follow, and maybe there's something else out there that our female soccer players might want to consider. So my background, I was a professional soccer player. That was always my ambition from a very young age. My dad encouraged me to have a ball at my feet anytime I wasn't at school. If I wanted to become a professional, I had to practice. We all know that. So when I wasn't at school, always had a ball at my feet. My career went on quite a steep upward curve from quite a young age. Age 14, I get picked for the national team in Scotland, representing my country up to age 18. Competing all over Europe, all over the world. It was a brilliant thing. It helped get me on that right track to become a professional. I left school after 5th year here in Scotland. Didn't quite complete my education in full time at Hibernian. And one of the images on the top line of the presentation, the kind of purple kit, is me, age 17, making my debut for Hibernian at Celtic Park in front of 56,000 fans in a Scottish Cup tie. And all my dreams were coming alive. This ambition to become a professional, was fantastic. Everything was coming alive for me. The following year, I moved to Aberdeen, probably the 3rd biggest club here in Scotland, as you know, and a pretty big money move. Again, my career was really trending in the right direction. And then something pretty bad happened to me. I had a pretty nasty pelvic injury. I had 3 or 4 very painful operations. And what I did for the first time in my life was probably reflect on how much I'd had to give up to become a professional. I'd had to give up on my education. Most of my friends at that stage were now in university. Their careers were starting to take off, and I was really concerned about my future. What was life going to be like? I'd put all my eggs in the one basket. Now, I did just about pick myself back up. I moved to a smaller club called Inverness Caledonian Thistle, where I had a successful almost 8 years. I then moved to a club called St Johnstone. Again, starting to get a little bit older now, starting to have that apprehension again about what's going to happen next for me. What am I going to do when I retire from football? Again, I've not been prepared. I haven't been to university. I don't know what that transition from being a professional athlete is going to be like. At age 32, at this time, a pretty bad foot injury, and I had to retire and I had to start again. I did what most athletes consider. I thought about coaching, but then I had to kind of make that really difficult transition into the workplace. And nothing I had done from age 10 had really prepared me for that transition. And the reason I make this point is that I don't think that has to be the only way that we can go on a journey that takes us on a route to become a professional. So, as this slide says, why might we choose college soccer in the US? A pretty glaring statistic which we take from academy football here in the UK, and it says that only 0.012% of players who join a professional club between ages of 10 and 12 will ever play for the first team. So what that says is this aspiration I had to become a professional player was going to be a tough thing to accomplish. And it's the same for any young person, regardless of where we are in the world. The US as an alternative does give us an opportunity to have a professional, athletic and academic progression pathway. What that's going to do for us is it's going to help us prepare for a life perhaps in soccer, but also for a life out with soccer. You know, if we don't become professionals, or if we retire, you know, what does life look like for us when we stop playing? What kind of job would we like to have? As I say, reflecting on my journey, all my eggs were in the one basket. What we are passionate about here at First Point is trying to make sure that our young people have an opportunity to progress in life, in their sport, but also in their studies, and that's going to help set you up for life. So, as most of you know that there's a professional league for girls and women in the US, the National Women's Soccer League. It has an annual draft system where the top college athletes in the US can step into professional football. But that doesn't just have to happen in the US. We've got a really good example of a young Australian girl, Bronwyn Studman, who was a former client. Bronwyn studied at University of Cal Berkeley before signing for Perth Glory in the W League in Australia. And now she's working, having retired, for Ernst & Young. So I would often ask a young person in a presentation, you know, whose pathway would you like to follow? You know, if Bronwyn became a professional and I became a professional, you know, who would you rather be? Would you rather have that, you know, single focus without the academic side of your development, or would you like to have a pathway that sets you up for the future? So, you know, having introduced that idea, I think it's important to highlight that, you know, we believe in this pathway. We believe that young people can get a lot out of being in the US, and it's going to set you up for a future in sport and out with it, you know, when you transition from being perhaps a professional player into the workplace. So I'm hoping that's making a little bit of sense in terms of why you might want to consider this pathway versus mine. So First Point USA, who are we? We are a leading international student recruitment service. We've been on the go now for 22 years. We've placed over 30,000 student athletes, and in that time, we've secured over $300 million in scholarship support for our athletes. We do actively work with around 2,500 colleges and universities in the US. And a really nice thing for us at First Point is that our organisation, our company, is very much founded, you know, by athletes for athletes. Our chief executive was a Hearts Academy player many years ago, our city rivals when I was at Hibs. And Andrew didn't progress into a professional contract as I did. And Andrew went out to the University of Cincinnati. He studied for 4 years, became an All-American. When he came back to the UK, he created First Point. You know, his motivation was to help guide and support other athletes with this same opportunity. Another nice fit for us at First Point is that most of our staff are either former professional athletes like myself or former college athletes. A number of our staff are actually former clients of First Point, which means at one point in their life, we've taken them across to the US. And when they've come back to the UK, you know, there's a nice fit for our company to employ college athletes who can help guide that next generation of clients and prospective student athletes. We have a pretty big team here at First Point. We've over 70 members of staff currently. And we operate out of our Glasgow office where I'm sitting this evening. We have an office in Manchester at the Etihad Stadium. Wembley Stadium in London is our London base. We have an small office in Shanghai, Delhi and Miami. I'm over here to talk about soccer this evening. Our expertise does stretch across 18 different sports. So we're working in sports like field hockey, rugby, track and field, swimming, tennis, golf, cheer and dance, lacrosse. Lots of different sports. You know, if there's a sport that's been played in college in the US, the chances are at First Point, you know, we've had an opportunity to support an athlete. In terms of our general work, you know, we will have open trials, we'll have events all over the world. I have a team in Australia who've just landed, who are going out to put on football and rugby events over the next 2 weeks. We have events here in the UK. You might see these online, or trials that we have. That's a way that we use to interact and engage with athletes. We also have some fantastic partnerships. We work with the PFA here in Scotland. We work with Scottish Women's Football, of course, a fantastic new partner for us. We work with QPR, with Ross County, with Fulham, and an exciting new partnership we have in the US with Philadelphia Union, who are probably the premier academy across the US. So we are, you know, we use these exciting partnerships to help us engage with athletes. You know, college coaches don't have the time or financial resource to, you know, to come and recruit across to Europe. or somewhere else in the world. So, they'll put their faith in an organisation like First Point to help with that international recruitment for them. They're always looking for the next best athlete, and our job at First Point is in part to try and find those athletes and to help place them in colleges and universities across the US. Okay, that brings me to the end of the initial introductory phase to tonight's presentation. I'm really keen to hear from Grace. I've put together a tough line of questions for her, which I shared last night, so she could do a little bit of preparation. But I know she's just back from the US and a little bit probably jet lagged still. But Grace, I was really keen to hear from you. You're a fantastic role model for young girls and women. You have not only become a college athlete in your time in soccer, but also transitioned into the professional ranks when you graduated. But I'm really keen to understand, how did football begin for you? How did soccer begin? Where did it all start? And what did that look like when you were a young kid?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. It's cool to be able to talk about this. So I grew up in Singapore, and from the age of 4 to 16, that's where I grew up playing, basically. And it's a small country, but it's very international, and we follow the American school system. So football was kind of offered everywhere, and it was kind of the norm for young girls to play. So I grew up playing on my school team and also on my club team, and just due to the nature of Singapore's weather and lifestyle, I was kind of just always outside doing it. But other sports too, just quite sporty growing up, and yeah, it's sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then when you moved back to the UK, did that, did football continue for you? What did that look like when you moved back to the UK?
Yeah, I moved back to the UK when I was 16, and they didn't offer football at my school, unfortunately. So I had to join my local club, and at the time the closest one was Keynsham and Yeovil. So I was in Somerset. So I played with them alongside playing. I think I did field hockey at school. So I did 2 times a week training at my club, and then Sunday games. So managed to balance both, which is ridiculous looking back. I would not have the energy now. And then from there, I decided to pursue football out in America. So I took a gap year first to kind of suss out my options and actually go out to the States to have a look at some of the colleges, and then decided to pursue it.
Yeah, what was it? Was there anything in particular that kind of inspired you to look at the US college option in terms of your football development? Was there anything that did you know anyone who'd done it before? How did that come about? What was the motivation there? Was there something did you have any friends who'd looked at it?
Yeah, exactly. There's a girl in my house who went on a field hockey scholarship the year before me. And I remember through my gap year, I was watching her on social media, just having the most amazing time. And so she was a massive influence to why I actually signed up, because I really wasn't so happy with my A-level results and the options I was going to get in the UK. And so I knew if I went to America, I could go to a better school and play at a good standard and have the combination of it all being in one place. I think the problem with the UK is you have to kind of pick your education or your club and balance it yourself. But in America, it's kind of all encompassing, and you have people looking after you in that little bubble. So it makes things more manageable, and your targets are just right in front of you, which is awesome.
And I guess it sounds like, and it's a pretty typical, situation if we go back a number of years where, the sort of progression pathways for girls and women were pretty limited. And it's brilliant to see how much the game has really developed and grown in the last probably, 10 years. But I'm guessing back then, probably the pathway for progression was even more attractive in the US because of the support you would receive potentially.
Yeah, exactly. And from a really young age, I think my role models were always men. So I looked up to Frank Lampard and David Beckham, and then the one female role model I had was Mia Hamm, and she was American. And some other links, maybe it was also just because I was in Singapore, but watching Bend It Like Beckham and She's the Man, it was always kind of okay, the women go to America and they play there, and that's where the best football is. And so yeah, it was always at the back of my head, like that's where I will play one day. But then actually, actually putting it in place when I was like 17, 18.
And obviously you earned that scholarship at the University of Miami. How did that come about? And did you have other offers, or was that the only opportunity you had?
Yeah, so that came about really early on through the agency I was using at the time, and it was after a showcase where I went to go and play, and you kind of play with a bunch of other people. You guys have them at First Point.
Yep.
And so I got recruited for Miami really early on, but then didn't commit because I was quite unsure. And then that fell through because their coach actually left. But then later I had I had 5 offers from places in the US. It was like Providence, Temple, all D1 schools, but none like the Miami standard. Anyway, I went out to go visit all of them just to go have a feel of it. And I remember just being completely blown away with like the standard of facilities and how warm they were of like welcoming you and into their universities and their programs of like how you'd improve as a player and how they have your best intentions. And it wasn't until we were out there that we actually just emailed the new coach at Miami just to double check, since we were in America anyway. And luckily enough, she said yes and said, come down and meet us. And it was literally my last day in America. And we drove from like Southern Mississippi all the way down to Miami within like that evening. And as soon as I got to campus and met her and the coaches, I was like, this is the only place I want to go. And it was just kind of one of those moments where I was like, whoa, like this is it. And then luckily there was, because I was really late in the game, this was in my gap year and I was trying to go that year, so luckily there was a little bit of scholarship money left. So I went in on quite a low scholarship, but then it actually got raised my second year. It can fluctuate.
Absolutely. And in terms of using an agency, was that something that you found beneficial? And in terms of creating maybe more than one offer, was that something that was helpful to you to kind of guide you on that journey?
Yeah, massively. My dad and I sent out like a mass email to all these Division 1 schools like that caught my eye. Just random emails and got absolutely like nothing back, not one. It must be like flooded with.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That when you sit with a college coach and he's got the same, bit of mail through through his office letterbox on a daily basis, they tend to look at it for about 5 seconds and it finds its way into the bin. And in our experience, so I'm glad you had a positive experience with the agency. And in terms of as a young girl moving across to the other part of the world, you might say moving across to the US, can you remember that day that you left home and, how were you feeling? How were your parents feeling about you, heading over? It's obviously a big thing to do at a young age. How did that feel?
Yeah, it felt scary and, but there was definitely an excitement there, which kind of was a bigger feeling than the scare. So kind of ran with that. I do remember right before I signed to go, I was like pretty unhesitant I was going to go, and my mom was there like, whoa, like, are you sure you want to do this? But yeah, it's scary making a big move. Luckily I had an upbringing in Singapore and then a big move already myself within my lifetime, so I've had a big jump into a new culture already, so it felt a little bit less scary. Miami as a place has a lot of similarities to Singapore, so that was very appealing to me. So personally, it was more excitement and kind of I was excited to get the opportunity to play like really good football again. I remember being on the bench quite a lot in my last year of school playing for Yeovil and just kind of falling out of love with the game and not really liking the culture. I was quite young in a women's team, and I was excited to be on a team with girls my age and in a conference which I knew we'd be playing some of the best teams in the country. Like at the time, I think, I don't know who the best conference is now, but when I was playing there, we had UNC, University of North Carolina,
Yep.
Florida State, and those were kind of like the big dogs. So I was just so excited to be a part of that. Yeah.
And you arrive on campus, you're meeting the other girls, you're getting settled into your accommodation, you're enrolling classes. How did all that feel? Did you have a lot of support? You're again a young girl, you've got all of these things to to kind of do. You arrive on campus. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was big and daunting, but you have so many people looking after you. You really are treated as a professional the second you walk on campus. We came in early before preseason. I went in for summer classes, and it was a big help actually, because I went in with a lot of other girls studying as freshmen, and starting classes and just getting a feel for the campus. I think we had like a few weeks before we had to knuckle down and start getting fit. So just being there a little bit early and getting used to it all. But I remember being, I remember the classes being really appealing to me, because the American structure is you don't have to knuckle down and pick your exact subject straight away. Yeah. And that really suited me because I had no idea what I wanted to do or study at uni. So I went in and did like a psychology class and like a film class and all these things that I'd never touched on before. And then on top of that, they build your English and math as well, which like isn't my strong suit, but it was at a fine level to kind of excel at. So it was just like a really broad, good balanced program. And I remember feeling like capable, which was cool.
Yeah, and do you think going into that team environment, versus going on to campus as an individual kind of general student, did you feel like going into that athletics department and that team environment, did that maybe help you feel at home a little bit quicker and help you settle in?
Yeah,
with your teammates around you.
Yeah, definitely. Every university will have like an athletic center, and it's kind of a big hub of all the athletes, and you'll pass in and out of there through physio rooms and there's study centers. And it feels like, I know a lot of college people join a frat or a sorority when they join somewhere to kind of make friends. And then when you join as a student athlete, that is technically your fraternity or your sorority. You really feel like you've got a network with you on campus. Is usually a lot of internationals, because naturally scholarships are coming in from a lot of different places. Yeah.
And you touched on it there. You took some summer classes to help you settle in. So you started in fall. It's the most intensive kind of semester. You've got to hit the ground running. You've got that heavy training schedule, competitive match schedule. Add into that warmer climate. I know you'd been in Singapore, so you're maybe a little bit more used to the heat. But how did that feel, kind of settling into that workload? And what did a kind of typical week look like for you when you started in August?
It was hard. I remember it being really full on, and I remember feeling really overwhelmed. But it was like an overwhelmed but organized feeling. It wasn't out of control. It was just like, whoa, I've never had this much on my plate before, and actually being able to manage it. Because you've got classes throughout the day. Well, because of the heat, actually, we trained really early in the morning. We trained between 7 and 8, I think. That's when we started. And then classes start typically around 10 or 11, or earlier, depends. And you basically have a day full of classes. In summer school, if you're coming early, you've just got one class in the day and get the whole afternoon to chill. But yeah, typical day. We train in the morning. I believe Miami now train in the afternoon. So it's just dependent on which college you're at.
School. Yeah. And I'm guessing you'd quite a bit of travel. I know you like an aeroplane to go to an away game. What was that like? Being on aeroplanes every other day, traveling to other states and stuff. What was that like?
So cool. Just mad looking back, because we would have one flight like not overseas, like throughout up the East Coast, like once a week basically, because we'd have games, because season's only 3 months, but like every week you'd fly somewhere, I remember. So you'd play on Thursday and Sunday, and you have one home and away game. So yeah, we'd be jumping on a flight or a long whole bus ride. I think we did up to like the Florida states, which was awesome. It's just amazing. You miss a couple lectures at the end of the week, but you can catch up with them online, and you can work on the road, and everyone's kind of doing it on your team. So it's just feels like it's uni away from uni. Yeah, it's awesome.
And can you remember a kind of particular game or a stadium that you would visit that sticks out, and or maybe a kind of fierce rival that you guys had that was a kind of game that you had to win? Was there anything that kind of sticks out in your 4 years?
Our fierce rival was always Florida State, because they were the other team, and they were also like the ones to beat, because they had won the ACC and national championships quite a few times. So playing them, usually we'd get smashed, but playing them was always a highlight, to try and beat them as an underdog.
Yeah.
And I do remember one game up in Portland. It must have been a preseason game, because they weren't in our conference, but the crowd they had was just unbelievable, to the point where we couldn't hear each other on the field. And I'd never experienced that before. Like they had drums in the audience and stuff. And yeah, it must have been thousands of people there. Just a massive student watching culture, which it was awesome.
And obviously you are a full-time student, full-time athlete. I think you've maybe touched on it a little bit. When you were traveling, you would have all that additional support that goes into helping a college athlete to have a successful 4 years. I mean, I think about my time in football, where I often felt like a bit of a commodity. I was useful if I was fit and able to play, but other than that, I'm not quite sure I was that valuable. But in the US, did you guys feel that it was about your development? Did you have, in order to balance that workload, did you have a lot of support as a student athlete, did you think?
Yeah, like so much. When I look back at my University of Miami and then my professional career of 4 years, the most professional I actually felt was at college, which is bad. But just the funding's there, the support system's there, the opportunity to jump on a plane and travel, the physios and the people who are hands-on with you within your immediate circle is so professional. And there's always, because Americans love their goal setting and targets and stuff, it's always a goal to be reached. I just remember that it was always something to achieve, and people were around and to do that for you, and you wanted to do it for each other.
It's amazing to it's quite maybe difficult for to reflect on the idea of a college program being way more professional than a professional program. But having seen it with my own eyes, having visited Penn State in January, I was at Harvard last week in Boston. I understand it now, but before I would always have said, no, surely professional clubs are more professional than college teams. But you're absolutely right. It's definitely the opposite, and it's quite difficult to picture unless you've maybe been on campus or or watched something online. So can I take you away from the field for a minute? What was campus life like? Did you have a time to socialise with your friends? Attend other events in the area and maybe on campus. What was life like when you weren't being a full-time student and a full-time athlete? What was that like? Living in Miami. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, student life was it was good fun. Miami's definitely the kind of city which is work hard, play hard. There's a big party culture, so we couldn't really party, so you say, through season, but then there is a lot of off time to go and explore those scenes, which is fun. And you don't have to sacrifice your entire social life to play at collegiate level. So yeah, there's good there's a good social life, but there's also like great clubs on campus. There's enough room for you to go and explore what you want to do. I fell into filmmaking, so I did a lot of work within like the media section. So I was working within the radio broadcasting scenes for a bit, and there was like a television show that I was a part of. And yeah, they've got just like loads of clubs on campus for whatever you're interested in, really.
Yeah, and that was actually I meant to ask you actually, and then it was one of my questions about what you actually studied. I know you touched on the kind of different the way you can choose. You can go across as an undecided major. You weren't sure what you wanted to study. What did you decide to study then? And you'll give us a little bit of an insight to that. I think you've touched on the the kind of way that it helped you, I guess, to advance in your education, just the way that the system's set up. But what was that like?
Yeah, so I tried loads of different random classes my freshman year, and I did one introduction to filmmaking, and just absolutely fell in love with it and decided. So I declared that as a major my second year, and then I figured out I had enough room to do another major on top of that. So it was motion pictures production, which was a lot of like hands-on making movies kind of work. And then I did media management as well, which was a bit more of like the business sales side of me, and like research and analysis and more,
yeah. Yes, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of our staff that I talk to will say to me that they would never have gone to university here in the UK, and it was very much the opportunity to to combine their studies with their play that was the bit that helped them to achieve that degree. So it's great to hear that. Again, that's something that I'm guessing you would probably echo in terms of that. The opportunity in the US, the way the system's set up to help you develop on and off the field was probably something that you benefited from versus staying at home in the UK.
Definitely. So I'm not particularly an academic, and I know I would have struggled if I went to university in England and had to like look after myself.
Yeah.
You do have staff support in England, but I don't know the comparison. But yeah, they make sure they're watching you as an athlete and how you balance, and you're basically tested quite regularly. In America, it's a bit more like school. You have like every semester, so every half year you've got little tests and exams and stuff. It's not like the accumulation of 3 years work of lectures. So that benefited me and a lot of others in terms of just like football and staying on track, because it was kind of little doses.
Absolutely. And in those 4 years, would you say that they've have they changed your life? Was there anything that you would, if you were giving any advice to a young girl who's maybe listening on the call tonight, is there, has it changed their life? That was the first part of my question. And kind of what advice would you give to a mum or dad listening, or a young person listening tonight on this particular pathway?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely changed my life. It's broadened my perspective on people and places of just living overseas. It's helped me develop my confidence. I used to be just terribly shy, and going out there and being on a team and having a voice was massive for me growing as an individual. And academically, I was pushed and like challenged in it like enough for me to kind of excel and explore like subjects that I wouldn't have necessarily seen in England. And advice, I'm an advocate for going to do it. I would just say do it. If you can, have a look and go and see before, because usually seeing it in person is quite breathtaking. I remember when Miami came through and I kind of rolled my eyes about it because I just didn't understand online. But the American people in general are really hospitable and really positive, and you will be pushed. But I think if you're the type of person who needs that, then I would recommend America, definitely. like if I was just to, with my kind of mentality, I think if I went to university in England, I'd just get swallowed up within the party scene and not really kind of focus on my football. But like if you want to really take it seriously and be a part of something so special and be able to travel around the States and be treated as a professional, then I'd still say it's uncomparable to the UK. Yeah.
Incredible. And you know, from college, you know, you're one of those athletes who then was able to advance into, well, we're going to call it professional football, but you've maybe given us a bit of an insight that you felt that it was more professional, you know, back in college. But you know, you played in Iceland initially, you know, with Selfoss, and then you moved to France with Stade de Reims. How you know, how did that come about? And you know, was that something that had that ever been an aspiration for you? And how did that kind of come about?
It just kind of happened. I never really went through college thinking, oh, I need to play more after this, because when I was in college, I was like, whoa, this is it. This is kind of like the highest I'll ever play. It was only after I graduated when I was kind of like, oh, I'm only going to have my legs once. Like, I better give this a go now. Yeah. And so I got the same agent that the girl in the year above me got, just because it was the only one I knew was around. And he, within like 2 weeks of me having him, it was one of these offers. It's crazy within the professional world. You've got to make these decisions so quickly. So an offer came through for, I think, a Portuguese team, and I took too long deciding whether I wanted it. And so it fell through. And then the next day, Iceland came up, and I didn't want to lose it again. And the transfer window was closing. So I was like, I'm just going to go. And yeah, super random for me. I'd never even known there was like football in Iceland. But credit to my agent, because it was the perfect stepping stone of a league before I went to France. It was kind of, yeah, it was just fun, and you could have a football. It was definitely less full on than college. You have like I suddenly found my days are a lot more free. But the good thing about them being free in Iceland is we'd take the time to go and travel around the country, and we'd like play football in the afternoon, but drive and see a waterfall in the morning. So it was like football and National Geographic mixed.
The one, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
You know, it's always something that we forget about when we play sport. It's the other things that it does, the experiences we have. You know, I've been to Iceland on a couple of occasions, and it's not a country that would ever have been visited had it not been through, you know, my interactions with, you know, maybe playing in the national team as a young person, or you know, traveling to, you know, to watch a game. So it's amazing how sport, you know, opens up parts of the world that we perhaps wouldn't ever, you know, perhaps ever see. So incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's the biggest benefit football can give someone, like a passport to go new places and meet new people. Like I'm realizing that so much this year, having stopped, that you can't just like jump ship and move where you want to go. It's like it's hard to move around, and I completely took that for granted. So if you know you want to travel and see different cultures and live in different places, then yeah, use your football.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes, you know, I think we get caught up in the only positive destination we can have as footballers is to, you know, to play in a first team somewhere. But actually, the longer we play sport, you know, the longer the benefits, or the more benefits that we can have, and we can, you know, the spin-offs that come from being connected with other people from other parts of the world, and also getting to visit some really cool places too. So Grace, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rest now. I'll ask you a couple other questions as we go through the kind of remaining slides, and I'm sure everyone will be really keen to hear from you again with some kind of questions. So I'll give you a little bit of a breather, and I'll put myself back on the hot seat to go through some more of the presentation. But an incredible insight, Grace. Absolutely incredible on your time in the US. Just incredible. Cool. Okay, something that we, you know, Grace, you know, asked Grace to talk about was the idea of using a scholarship agency, and maybe some of the benefits that would maybe bring if you're a young athlete. at First Point, we're always honest enough to say that, this is something you can do yourself if you've got the time. You can reach out to college coaches. You can try and, gain a scholarship on your own. It's maybe not the most scientific way to try and do it, as Grace highlighted. And as an alternative, you might want to enact the services of a scholarship agency. At First Point, we aspire to be the best in the world. We're certainly one of the biggest in the world. But it's something that is really important to us, is that we are accredited. We're certified, to the very highest level. The governing bodies of college sport in the USA, the NCAA, the NAIA, and the NJCAA, which covers junior college. Uniquely, we are certified by all of these agencies. Over the last 22 years, we have built up that certification. It's really important that you get good advice. Not trying to scare anyone, but if you engage the services of an agency and they do something which is deemed to be an illegal practice by the NCAA, if that's discovered, the ultimate sanction can be that you would lose your scholarship. Your coach might also be fired if something has happened in illegal practice. So something that we're really proud of is that level of certification. We go through an annual audit process with the NCAA, making sure that we're doing everything properly as a certified agency. So always important, if you are going to use an agency, just make sure that you're working with an agency who are experienced and who are certified. But you absolutely can, you can do this yourself. I thought this slide would be quite important tonight to kind of highlight, some of the young girls that we've been working with over the years. Being in Scotland, I'm sure most of you guys will know Catherine Hill, who's the current captain at Glasgow Rangers. Amy Waring is a young client that we signed just last year. Amy's just started at Grace College in Indiana. She's gone over a little bit earlier. Amy is only 17. She's decided she wanted to start a little bit earlier. A young girl called Olivia Potter, although she's wearing a Hamilton strip in this particular image. Olivia was on loan from Celtic last year, played in the national team at under 19 level last year, and she was very fortunate to achieve a full scholarship at Old Dominion University in Virginia. Hannah McCaffrey, no relation to me, unfortunately, but Hannah will be part of our class of 2024. Recently signed with us here at First Point from Hibernian. And the kind of last person, and again, this is not an exclusive list. There are many more examples, but we always like to tailor a presentation to make sure that we can give examples of athletes that we have been working with. So, Katie Gordon's another example, who moved from Charlton Athletic to DePaul University before transferring to Oregon State. She's also an Australian under-20 international. So, hopefully, young girls and women that you know. I'm guessing some of you maybe watch Catherine play on a regular basis for Rangers. There are many more girls who are now playing. Thinking about Taylor Otto, who plays at Celtic, who went to North Carolina and studied and played for 4 years. These are young girls who are coming back to Scotland, I think better prepared, to take on the challenges of being a professional soccer player. They're not being judged at 18. They're going to cross and developing for 4 years in that professional environment, and coming back to Scotland, I think better prepared, having had that wonderful life experience, that degree education behind them, and now stepping into the professional ranks. So we're really looking forward to watching Amy and Olivia's progress, and of course young Hannah when she heads across next year. I've picked out a couple of big examples. I was on campus at Harvard last week. It was quite incredible. It's almost like being in a town. It's like a town on its own, and a lot of the campuses are like that. It pretty much has everything you can imagine in a small town, but it's a college campus. Again, facilities are just quite incredible. Great walk around the athletics department. I tend to use this slide as a bit of a prompt. University of Michigan, there's a fantastic documentary on Amazon Prime about the Michigan Wolverines. It's called All or Nothing. If you watch that documentary, you'll start to see just how big, Grace was talking about how big college sport is. You'll start to get an idea. That stadium in Ann Arbor, 100,000 fans pack into it to watch the American football team. You'll start to realise that in the US, everyone has a college team before they have a professional team that they support. It's an incredible thing to witness. I've been very fortunate to visit a number of campuses this year already. And these documentaries, start to bring it to life. They start to bring to life that, that student athletes are almost celebrities. They stand out from the crowd. They're not just general students. They're held in such high regard that you're a bit of a celebrity. And these documentaries are really, really good to, a good idea to watch to try and bring that to life for you. This slide again builds on that. US college sport is big business. That TV contract across all sports currently is worth $22.4 billion. It's one of the things that helps fuel scholarship support for athletes. An amazing statistic. Dabo Swinney, the American football head coach at Clemson University, is on a 10-year contract and he earns $10.5 million US a year. And as most of you know, Mikel Arteta is the manager of Arsenal, the team that finished second in probably the biggest league in the world, the English Premier League. Mikel Arteta doesn't earn anything like $10.5 million US a year. So incredible to think about college coaches earning more than our professional coaches here in the UK. Again, thinking about those stadiums, some of those arenas, 8 of the 10 of the biggest in the world are actually based on US college campuses. At Penn State, the American Football Stadium, which is next to the soccer stadium, it holds 106,000 fans for a home game. Across the street on the corner, you've got the basketball stadium, and you've got the ice hockey arena. It's just incredible to see these incredible facilities, world-class facilities on a college campus. And the kind of last thing to kind of touch on in this particular slide, and if you can imagine a university, somewhere here in the UK, and you can imagine that it's got an athletics department. Can you imagine that athletics department earning $389 million US for the university itself? That's what Oregon sports teams generated in 2021. So, all of those, full stadiums, the ticket sales, the TV deals, the sponsorship deals, all of that, helps to fuel the opportunity for the next generation of athletes, whether that's them enhancing their facilities, their coaching staff, and enhancing the level of scholarship support they can provide an athlete. College sport is big business, and that's what really fuels the opportunity for girls and women to consider this as a pathway. Okay, this slide is not designed to put anyone off. I know Grace spoke about the kind of schedule that she had and maybe training a little bit early, but this slide is really to try and highlight that we're not going across to the US for a bit of a holiday. We're going across and we're going to be busy. Full-time student, full-time athlete. There's a challenge to be taken on there. You're going to be with your team. It's a fantastic environment to develop, as a professional athlete and also as a student. But it's going to be a tough experience, particularly in that first semester when you're playing so many games. August maybe through to the end of November, a really, really busy period. You will have a little bit of a break, in the second half of the year, January through to May, the spring semester, where you won't play as many games. But when you're looking at this slide, factor in the travel. Being on an aeroplane, being on a bus. As Grace said, you will be allowed to miss class, but you're not allowed to miss that assignment being on time. So you will have tutors travelling with you. You will have additional support. At Penn State, they have their own study hall, which is pretty typical for athletes. Only athletes are allowed to be in there to make sure that they're keeping up with their studies and they're getting all the support they need. So a really, really busy and full-on experience, as a soccer player. From those early gym sessions to being in class, bit of nutrition with the team for practice. You could be going over some game tape from a previous game, preparing for a big match with a rival. A bit of dinner, bit of time to study, and before you know it's time for bed and you're going again. That's what a day in the life can look like, and what it's like to become a soccer player in the US. That daily routine. The early gym sessions, nutrition, fantastic facilities to play, to train. By the end, you're seeing the kind of wider athletics department coming together to support the American football team at that stadium, which is their stadium. It's on campus. It's just enormous, and just an incredible experience for those young athletes at Clemson. Obviously, a fantastic program. Okay, scholarships. Really keen to try and explain a little bit about what a scholarship is. That's really, really important. We've been talking about it all evening. A full scholarship, as the word would suggest, would typically involve a university paying all of your tuition, your accommodation on campus, your food on campus, any books related to your studies, and anything you need as a soccer player, anything related to your sport. If all of that was covered, that would be what we would call a full scholarship. So I mentioned Olivia Potter, who's going out to Old Dominion. For Olivia, that's what we were able to achieve for her. What's most common, and Grace touched on it, is the idea of a partial scholarship, which means you are actually asked to make an annual contribution to each of your 4 years. Essentially, what that means is that if you can imagine the actual cost to be there for the year is here, we achieve some scholarship support for you, but we don't quite get to the full amount. There's something left over to pay. That's where the term partial scholarship comes. So, on average, when we look at that across our athletes, and I'm going to qualify this in a moment, we see our athletes paying on average around £12,000 UK, which is the difference between the full cost to be there, deducting scholarship support, and there being something left to pay in each of those 4 years. Now, one of the things I was keen to touch on tonight, and Grace will know about this, is a thing in America called Title IX. Title IX ensures that for every dollar they spend in the US on a male athlete, they have to spend that on a female athlete. And because they spend billions of dollars on male-dominated sports like basketball and American football, what it means for our female athletes is that typically they have an ability to achieve more scholarship support. So that cost that I give you guys as an average is not something to be concerned about, because as a female athlete, that the opportunities are far greater than we have for our male athletes. But it is important to highlight the difference between a full scholarship and a partial scholarship. As Grace mentioned, as a freshman, the coach has an opportunity as you move then into your second year to enhance your scholarship, which means the university is going to pay more and you're going to pay less in each of those remaining 3 years. Again, for anyone who's very academic, there's an opportunity to also achieve academic scholarship. So the coach giving you something would be classed as athletic scholarship. If you were to receive some academic scholarship, that's the university itself rewarding you. You put these two sums of money together, and what we're doing all the time is to try to bridge that gap on the actual cost. Now, a commonly asked question is a scholarship secured for 4 years? It absolutely is. However, there is some safeguarding in there for you guys, in so much as if a young girl went across to the US or an athlete went across to the US, you were there for 1 year and you decided, this is not the right fit for me, this is not what I want to do anymore, you're protected in so much as you're then not charged for years 2, 3 and 4. So there's a bit of protection. But again, if you were to be injured, for example, and you couldn't continue to play, the university has to honour your scholarship. So there's quite a lot of protection for athletes built into the scholarship framework. And I'm happy to take any questions on these points about full versus partial later on, because it's really important. It's something that we do and we're really keen to do, is to highlight the difference between full and partial. But bearing in mind, Title IX does create more opportunities for our girls and women. Okay, going out to the US, it is a high level of academic study. It's a very, very strong degree you're working towards. 50% of the top 100 leading academic institutions are based in the US, very much geared for international students like you guys. It's a very, very diverse student population that you'll see on campus. But as Grace has already highlighted, it's a very supportive environment you're going into. You're not just a general student. You have all that wraparound support from your athletic, the athletic team, but also the support you receive from the academic staff. Another thing that is really a little bit different from here in the UK, we touched on this idea of being an undecided major. I'm not sure what I want to study, but you can decide perhaps after your first year, and then you can go and decide what you're going to major in or what you're going to get your degree in. Again, that process of examination is a little bit different, as Grace highlighted. You're not always cramming towards that end of year exam, all that stress and strain. You're graded right throughout the year. That allows you to maintain your grade point average, which allows you to be eligible to compete. Something that's really important when we spoke about full-time athlete, full-time student. If you're the best player in the team, you're still not eligible to play unless you keep up your studies. If we're here in the UK and we don't turn up for class, no one's probably going to chap our door and ask us where we are that day. In the US, they are. It's really important that you succeed on and off the field. So it's a very supportive environment, lots of degrees to choose from. But if you're not sure in terms of what you want to study, you've got a chance to go across as what we call an undecided major, which it sounds like Grace did in her first year. And you're allowed to then look at specialising as you move forward. So something a little bit different, but it's a very strong degree you're working towards. But it's a slightly different process of study, which I think is a much more rounded process maybe than we have here in the UK. Okay, first point, our service, again, is a little bit different. I'm really keen to try and explore a little bit this with you guys for a couple of minutes here. We refer to what we do as being a high-touch service. What that means is we're not signing athletes and putting them onto some sort of app and just hoping a coach interacts with our profile on that app. For us, it's about real interactions. If we think about a recruitment phase, that's maybe someone attending a trial, having a presentation, us having an assessment of them at a trial or through a partner. We're then trying to assess their suitability from an athletic perspective. We then sit down with a family, having presented to them to explain this process again. We're looking at their academic grades. We're looking at, is this going to be the right fit for them? If we think it is, we would perhaps offer them a place on our programme at First Point. And at that point, the athletes decide if they want to work with First Point. Our assistance then really starts to ramp up at that point. Our athletes are assigned a talent manager. A talent manager works with our client for the longest period of time. Their job is to help them to prepare for things like SAT exams, which is a college entry exam, to help pull together a portfolio from an academic perspective, their grade transcripts, pull together the high quality game footage. Game footage is going to be really important to your recruitment. It's what the coach is going to look at. They aren't going to necessarily come across here to the UK to look at you. That portfolio and how we present you is really, really important. But again, it's a hands-on, high-touch service, working with real people who are based primarily here in Glasgow, taking you through that process. At First Point, we're trying to do three things at all times, and that's trying to find you the best fit from an athletic, academic and financial basis, on a financial basis. So we have to find the right fit for you. We have to try and narrow those 1,600 soccer programs which girls and women can go to in the US. Even more than boys, 1,500 for the boys. And our job is to try and take all of those universities and colleges, start to funnel them down to find the right match for you. When we do that, we start to broker that deal for you. We're introducing to coaches. We're trying to get the best deal we can for you in terms of your scholarship. We then help you with the actual physical act of going, getting you ready with your visas, all your travel assistance. When you land in the US, we don't forget about you. We are here and we're mandated by the NCAA and others to make sure that we provide pastoral support and guidance over those 4 years. If, for example, you found yourself somewhere that you weren't happy and you wanted to transfer, we would look after you and make sure we could transfer you to another programme. If there were any concerns that you and your parents had, again, our job is to guide you through any of these difficulties and help you, so we don't forget about you. And as the slide says, that process can take 18 months, it can take 24 months. The key thing to remember is that at the moment, coaches are already recruiting for 2024. They're already recruiting for 2025. They are spending money, they are filling roster spots. So the more time we have to work with an athlete, the more time we've got to create that best version of them and to find the right fit for them. And it will make sense to you that if an athlete joins our programme, say in May, and they're looking to go out in August, the likelihood is there'll be less scholarship offers for them. They'll likely pay more money because the coach has already spent the lion's share of his budget. But it's a hands-on, high-touch service at First Point with real people. It's what you're paying us for versus doing it yourself. It's important that we provide a high level of service for you, and that's what we do at First Point. We do have 3 different packages, which I'm hoping you guys can see: our academy, our professional, and our elite package. They're all designed to get you where you need to be. There are some additional features as we move from the academy package into professional and elite. For example, there's a level of support for the preparation for the SAT exam in our professional package. There's also access to our dedicated training app, which is about your physical prep and development so that you're ready to hit the ground running through Sam Warburton's SW7 app. Our elite package takes that on a stage further, where you've got additional support for that SAT exam, one-on-one tutoring. We will send a small film crew across to cover one of your matches to make sure that your game footage is absolutely the best that it can be. Different packages to cater for the wants and needs of our clients from all over the world. Now, something that is a little bit cool to talk about is that as part of our partnership with Scottish Women's Football, any of the girls here in Scotland who decide that this is the right pathway for them, if they're a registered player, when you guys pick the package that you want to take, there's a 20% discount on each of those packages. That's not something the boys here in Scotland have the luxury of, but through that fantastic partnership with Scottish Women's Football, it just means that we can discount that partner rate so that you guys are paying a little bit less for that service. And it's something that you guys choose. at the point in which you decide to work with an agency such as First Point, you decide which package best suits your needs. And again, I can share some information on all of this. Okay, last couple of slides, you'll be pleased to know. We've been speaking about how big college sport is. We've been speaking about athletes and how they, ultimately it's athletes that generate the TV rights, the ticket sales, and all the endorsements that go along with it. But until 2021, athletes were not allowed to actually earn whilst they were in college. That's changed. We've painted a pretty extreme picture here with a young gymnast called Olivia Dunn. Olivia's at LSU. She is now earning millions of dollars in her time in college based on her name, image, and likeness. She has a huge social media presence. Young girls and women are interested in what she likes to wear, where she likes to socialise, what brand she wears. I think she's a brand ambassador for Nike. So since 2021, there's been a huge change, and athletes for the first time can earn during their 4 years in college. Now, not everyone's going to earn millions of dollars like Olivia, but going back to something I said about being a celebrity on campus, local businesses are looking for athletes to engage with them, whether it's a shop opening, a restaurant opening, signing autographs, just turning up for an appearance. And actually, some universities now are incentivising college athletes for being brand ambassadors for them and providing them with nil agreements. So it's just a little bit of a change, but keen to highlight that there are some opportunities for a really talented, international players to go across in the US and perhaps earn something during their time in college. We will share more details and information with you through SWF, and my details are obviously on screen just now. We're easy to find at First Point, easy to contact, and we'll be obviously keen to hear from anyone who's hopefully been inspired by tonight's presentation that this might be the right path for you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask you guys if anyone would like to ask any questions. You're able to kind of type these into the kind of sidebar on the chat, and Grace and I will try and answer these questions for you. Any questions?
You're also welcome to send me a message if you want to chat through anything or go anything further. I don't know the best way to do that. If I put my email down here, or
yeah, that would be perfect. If you want to do that, you could type it into the chat, Grace, for sure. Guys, any questions? It would be great if yeah, okay, what level of football do you have to be at to be accepted? Nicola, a fantastic question. So when I mentioned, there are 1,600 soccer programs across in the US, there are different levels. Grace played at what we call Division 1, which is often referred to as being the kind of highest level of playing in the US. There are 3 divisions within the NCAA. There are also 900 programs within the NAIA, which is another governing body, and then there's also junior college. So there are different levels. I once said to an athlete that I was speaking to that I was a football player and Lionel Messi is a football player, and at that point, the similarities end. But the point I tried to make was that there are different levels of professional football. There is different levels of college football. So if you are playing, a national team level like an Olivia Potter is, then perhaps you've got a chance of maybe achieving something like maybe a full scholarship. However, there are so many different levels that if you're playing at a strong grassroots level, as Grace was in terms of her younger years in football, Grace was still able to find a D1 spot, playing at a high level. So for girls and women, there are some fantastic opportunities, but the key thing to remember is there are so many levels. Our job at First Point is to find the right fit. That's what our job is. If someone is not a Division 1 player, there's no point in us promoting them to a D1 school. The kids will not get enough game time. They'll not have a positive experience. Our job is to try and find the right fit for you as an athlete and also as a student. Lynn, a fantastic question. Is there a minimum age and the academic requirements? So fantastic questions. I mentioned Amy who left us recently from having joined us from Glasgow City. Amy's gone over a little bit a little bit early. She's going to cross age 17. You know, typically 18 is the age that most athletes will go across. Some athletes will take a gap year, maybe of 12 months from when they complete school, and then they'll maybe go across, you know, maybe age 19. I'll try and cover off the academic requirements, and I'll try not. It's maybe not the most exciting subject, but it's something that's really, really important. So here in Scotland, when our kids complete our national fives in 4th year, that is the first marker for graduating high school. So 4th year at school, you know, looking at your national fives, completing them, C average and above, typically, depending on your subject choices that you've taken within that year, you may be eligible for the NCAA, or you may be eligible for the NAIA, or maybe junior college. But the first marker for graduating high school is 4th year. You then extend your graduation by a further year by doing 2 hires in 5th year. What that means is that after 5th year, you start your gap year, and you would go in year 18. If you wanted to extend your graduation for a further year, taking you up to 19, allowing you to have that gap when you complete high school at age 18. Here in Scotland, you would have to do 2 advanced hires. The idea is that you're advancing in education. So if you do 2 hires again in 6th year, you're kind of staying at the same academic level. So in England, GCSEs is the marker, and then the kids will do a couple of A levels in years 12 and 13 to extend their graduation. So typically age 18, from an NCAA perspective, you know, they're looking for some core classes to be covered. So at National 5 level, they're looking for maths, English, an earth science, a social science, and then one other core subject. That other core subject could be a second earth science. So if you've got biology, you've also got chemistry. You may also have a second social subject. You may have history, you may have geography. On top of that, the other option is something like a language. Those 5 core subjects would see you eligible from an NCAA perspective. If you're eligible for the NCAA, you'll always be eligible for NAIA and junior college. Again, you extend your graduation by doing those hires in 5th, and potentially your hires, advanced hires in 6th year. But these are things that we're often asked why we speak to young athletes. It gives us a chance to help influence some of the decisions they make when they have option choices at school. Another good question this time from Anne-Marie. Nicola, I'll come back to your question. Anne-Marie, your question, what age would you start the process of trials, etc.? So, you know, we have trials all over the world. On a UK level, we have them every month. Typically at Broadwood Stadium, we have had some standalone girl events, but we also have events that are mixed, and girls will come along. Again, the session is not you know, designed to have anyone get into, you know, hard tackles or any risk of being injured. It's very much a technical assessment. So we will have young girls, you know, coming along age 15 and above to those trials, and the team are very, very well versed in making sure that our girls in particular have a really positive experience at our trials. It allows us to assess potential and suitability. We add that in with the sort of level of play that they've got at their club. We then assess their academic ability, and then we make a bit of a decision on whether we think we can perhaps offer them a place. Nicola, your question's an interesting one. Are you happy staying on until 6th year and then applying? You know, something I said earlier on, it's a wee bit like if you were going to go to university here in Scotland, you know, you wouldn't make that decision as you complete 6th year. There's going to be a lead time to applying it and starting that process. So what I would say is that, you know, as a minimum, you know, 12 months, you know, perhaps 24 months would give us the best time to work with you and to try and get those offers and a range of offers, rather than it being a kind of narrow focus based on, you know, starting the process too late. I think Sarah Jane is maybe typing. Hope I answered your question okay there, Nicola. How many girls roughly compete in the trials? Sarah Jane, it's a fantastic question. It can really vary quite dramatically from one trial to another. You know, we'll have trials typically in England 4 or 5 days of the month. We'll have trials here in Scotland, usually at Broadwood or through in Edinburgh. And, you know, in a trial you could have, you know, 20 girls attending, 30 girls attending a girls only trial. In a mixed trial you could have between, you know, 5 and 10. It just really depends on But a lot of factors, you know, the time of year, the availability to attend the trial, lots of different variables there. But I can assure you, any young girl who attends one of our trials is really well looked after by our staff, so that they have a really positive experience. The other thing I should say is that it's not always essential to attend a trial. I know a lot of clubs use things like VO and Huddle to film matches. If someone wanted to submit game footage, I signed a young girl this year called Emma Lawson, who plays at Aberdeen. Emma came along, listened to the presentation, but didn't take part in the trial. Her dad kindly sent me on some game footage. We were able to assess that game footage and her suitability, and fantastic opportunity for us to sign someone as talented as Emma. And Emma's now part of the programme, and she'll be going out 2024 to start her time in the US. So you don't always have to attend a trial. Not everyone does. There are different ways for us to assess our young people. So coming to a trial is not essential. Lynn, a good question. How do you find out about the trial, when the trials are? So on our website, you will see, if you had a Google at First Point USA soccer trials, you will see typically a couple of months worth of trials will be posted on our website. You can sign up and register for one of those trials. Every month, religiously, we will be in either Broadwood. In the winter, we'll move into Tory Glen, to the indoor, because of the weather. Typically, the cost to attend a trial is £20, and you know that covers, you know, things like your insurance for the day, you know, the presentation, chance to interact with the coaches, and you know, typically it's a really positive day, and it's a tough session. You know, that we put our you know, our trialists through a tough session so that we can assess their potential for this particular pathway. But you'll see on our website, our next trial at Broadwood is on Monday, the 18th of September, typically around about a 2 o'clock start. Aspirationally, what we would like to do, working closely with Scottish women's football, is to have more standalone girls-only trials. Sometimes the challenge with that is that if we don't have enough girls attending, you know, we're not able to get enough out of the session for them. Versus, you know, if you know, 4 or 5 attend and they're comfortable playing with the boys, you know, sometimes they prefer that, some of the girls, and you know, that sometimes is a better opportunity for them. Any other questions? I think everyone's, oh, one from Tom maybe. Tom's just typing.
Yeah, I couldn't manage to put on the chat. I don't know what's going on with my
That's okay. We can share out details, Grace. Myself and Adele will do that. Tom, really good to get some positive feedback from you there. Thanking you know, Grace for her insight, and I mean, I'm hoping tonight. I know it's been quite a long session, but it's really important to us. You know, this idea of having a high touch service, for us, it's all about sharing information. For the vast majority of young people we speak to, this is not the right pathway for them. That's an honest thing to say. We will sit in a room with, you know, 50 or 60 athletes and their parents all over the world, and it might not be the right thing for them, but it is the right thing for some of those athletes in the room. And in order to, you know, to engage properly, you know, we have to go through a bit of a process, and that does involve, wherever we are in the world, assessing, you know, and then sitting down and interviewing and chatting things through, because we need to make sure it's a big decision. We want to make sure our athletes are properly informed and they know that this is the right pathway for them. That's really, really important. But guys, the feedback's fantastic. We'll obviously communicate out to you guys off the back of tonight's event, and the event has been recorded. If anyone at any of your clubs would be interested in watching the presentation back, I will cut and edit and try and trim it down a little bit so that it's not as long. But I think Grace's insight is far better than anything I can ever offer. You know, I can give you the nuts and bolts of the process. I can tell you about what we do here at First Point. But Grace's insight tonight, I think it's just been fantastic, and I'm sure everyone's benefited greatly from it. So Grace, thank you very much, especially with the jet lag.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Grace, thank you very much. Guys, any final questions? I think we're pretty much done. if anyone has anything else they want to ask us about, you know, we're very easy to get in contact with. We are based here, you know, primarily in Scotland. We love the opportunity to help young Scottish girls and girls all over the world to take this path. So we're keen to help. So please reach out, and we'll do the same for you guys. Okay, thank you guys.